Welcome back to What You'll Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
And my name is Adam Jones. Today we are doing a book by the big man he is, Anthony Robbins.
Make your move!
Make your move. Awaken the Giant Within. Take immediate control of your mental, emotional, physical, and financial destiny. And on the front cover, he's kind of looking at you in a really weird kind of, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. He wants you to get the best out of yourself. He wants you to awaken that giant that we all have within us.
It's like an expectant look, like the giant's just about to awaken.
Mate, we all have a giant in us, and that's the thing is most people never awaken it.
Absolutely. So he kicks it off with a quote, "Deep within man dwell those slumbering powers that would astonish him, that he never dreamed of possessing. Forces that would revolutionize his life, arouse, and put into action."
Nice.
Orison Swett Martin.
He's a popular guy, Orison Swett
Mate,
Martin.
it's like it's one of those people. No one's heard of this dude. It's like,
he's got a sick quote.
Yeah, you can go up to like a random guy on the street and say, "Oh, say this, mate. What's your name?" And then you just put in a book. Who the hell is Orison Swett Martin? Anyway,
mate, this is obviously it's still part of Juggernaut Month, mate. This is a physical juggernaut in that it's 550 plus pages. Mate, it's heavy, it's large, much like the man himself. He's a large man, Tony.
He's a big boy.
And it's a juggernaut in terms of, obviously, Tony, super successful dude, awesome seminars, and a lot of awesome books as well.
We've seen him live, and yeah, he's got some juice. It's one of those books, man. If you read actively and you do some of the exercises,
yes,
I think it's probably the only way of getting value out of it, because the book it's pretty much Date with Destiny in a book format. So,
yes.
And Date with Destiny, his big seminar is worth like 10 grand or something ridiculous like that.
Mate, that's a good segue into destiny. He says that we all have dreams. We all want to believe deep down in our souls that we have a special gift, that we can make a difference, that we can touch others in a special way, and that we can make a world a better place. So we all have this belief that we are special, that we do have this great destiny ahead of us.
But the reality is, unfortunately, many of us have these dreams. They become shrouded in the frustrations of the daily routines of life, that we no longer even make an effort to accomplish these big dreams. So we kind of just shut them out of our life and forget they ever were there.
For too many people, that big dream that we have early on, it dissipates, it fades, it gets hidden at the back somewhere. And with it, we lose our will to shape our destiny. So this book is all about, taking control of your own destiny and taking the steps that will awaken this giant that we've got lying dormant within us.
Yep. So it's all about creating some change in yourself so you can become an absolute juggernaut and take on some ripper goals.
That's it, mate.
That's not the way he articulates
in Juggernaut Month. He talks about the concentration of power, which is concentration. So the power of concentration, in that if we focus consistently on improving in any area, we can develop these unique distinctions and we can make that area better. The issue is, though, most people dabble their way through life. So they're repetitive dabblers, where they try something new, they dabble in it, they never go too deep, and they give up and move on to the next thing to dabble in. Instead, we need to decide on one thing to master in. So rather than dabbling our way through life, pick something to master in and concentrate on it.
Yeah, and go hard on it. Theme common through all our books, not just from the big Tony speaking here.
Definitely, mate.
So it's all about, change, become the big dog.
Yeah.
And there's 3 ways you can change to become the big dog.
Mate, well, one way, but 3 steps.
3 steps.
Three
correct.
steps. So step 1, to create lasting change, which is a truly valuable change. It's lasting, it's consistent. Step 1 is raise your standards.
Absolutely. So you got to change what you're demanding yourself. So if your life is going at about a 5 out of 10, but you're happy with that and you're fine with that, then obviously you're not going to have the will in yourself to really change and make your life in a better way. So if you raise your standards where you're expecting an 8 or 9 out of 10 every day, and then you're probably going to put the actions in place to make your life in the future, closer to that mark.
He talks about some people like Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., the great Gandhi, Mahatma. He talks about they addressed society standards as a whole. So obviously they realized that either slavery or racism and etc. They're not good standards. They wanted to raise the standards. But us individuals need to look at our own individual standards that we're putting on ourselves. The standard of what we eat or what we do during the week or how we spend our money. They're all standards that we have for ourselves. And in order to make truly valuable, long-lasting change, we need to raise those standards.
And if you look at one of those people, like Gandhi, it's really unbelievable the changes he made in the world just from one person. So he didn't cop the racism that was dealt to him from the start. It wasn't part of his standards. So with that, he had the courage. He says the same a power that was available to them is available to you if you really have the courage to claim it. So it's all about just having the balls to just claim that.
That's it, man. So after we've raised our standards, step 2 is change our limiting beliefs.
Yes, so our beliefs, what we have deep under the surface, are like unquestionable commands telling us just how things are, and what's possible, what's impossible,
and that's so it, mate. If we've raised our standards, but we don't actually believe that we can meet those, we pretty much set ourselves up for self-sabotage. We're not going to try as hard as we need to. We're going to be lacking a sense of certainty and conviction, and we're not going to attack it full on. So once you've raised your standards, you need to change those limiting beliefs that say, no, you actually can't do this. Change those to believe that you can.
If you believe that something's impossible, obviously, pretty much as a guarantee, you got no hope. Basically, as a certain step, you need to believe that you can do things, or your beliefs aren't limiting you in what you can actually do. So
step 3, change your strategy. Now, mate, this quote just popped into my mind. I didn't have it written down. I think it's probably just deep within me from a Tony Robbins seminar we went to, mate. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So saying if you keep the same strategy, even if you've raised your standards and corrected those limiting beliefs, if you keep the same strategy, you're going to get the same results. So you need to change your strategy as step 3.
Yeah, definitely. So we've all probably know a few people on the outskirts of our lives who are just keeping on doing the same old thing. It doesn't matter how much drive they've got, they're actually just using the one strategy and they're really getting nowhere. So it's kind of being open enough and flexible to actually just change as things move along.
Man, I'm going to, this is not a verbatim quote, but isn't Einstein's thing saying that insanity is doing the same thing but expecting a different result? And so obviously that if we do the same thing, we can't expect a different result. If we want a different result, we need to change our strategy.
Yep. So the big thing you can do now is decisions, and that's chapter 2. So decisions are the pathway to power.
Mate, it's our decisions, not the conditions of our lives, that determine our destiny. So different people can have the same conditions. It's all about the decisions they make, though, as to where they eventually end up.
So one of the quotes that really slapped me up when we went and saw Tony Robbins, he kind of like hit you with trying to tell you that he says 10 years from now, you will surely arrive. The question is where? Who will you become and how will you live and what will you contribute? So it's this idea of 10 years from now, you're going to be somewhere. You might as well start designing, that to be in a good place rather than a shitty little place.
And designing's the key word there, in that if we want to change our life in 10 years, if we wait to 10 years and try to change it, it's too late. We need to start now deciding and start designing.
So he says right now you can make a decision. If you truly decide, fully decide, you can do almost everything. So making a true decision isn't saying like, oh, I'd like to quit smoking. Mm-hmm. It's like cutting off every other possibility. So when you decide, there's no other possibility of something happening other than what you decide to do.
That's it, man. There's a big difference between being interested in something, wanting something, hoping for something, and actually truly committing and deciding. So wanting and hoping is useless. Deciding and committing, that's where the big puppers are.
And the big wise Hannibal, the cannibal, he said, we will either find a way or make one.
That's it, mate.
So when he decides to gnaw on your brains, he's not having steak for dinner. He's having brains.
That's good to do that, Hannibal. Mate, 3 decisions that shape our life. The first one is we decide what to focus on. The second is we decide what they mean to us. And the third, we decide what to do with those in order to create the results that we desire. So obviously there's a whole bunch of different things we can focus on. We have to decide which. There's a whole different range of meanings that each of those could mean, and we have to decide what they mean. And then obviously we decide what do we do next.
One of the best decisions you can make is to decide to commit yourself to long-term results. So play the long game in life. Don't go for the short-term fixes. And he said, this is one of the big things you can do in your life. And
it really is, man. Every book, well, not every book, but a big majority talk about, in some way or other, delayed gratification. Don't go for the short-term wins. Go for the long-term satisfaction.
That's what it's all about. So chapter 3 is the force that shapes your life. And I really enjoyed this.
Mate, the only thing that really controls our life is pain or pleasure. That's everything we do. We're either trying to avoid pain or we're trying to gain pleasure. So everything we're doing, we're either trying to have less pain or more pleasure.
So these two things, this is huge, man. These are the things that really direct your life, your compass. You're either moving toward pleasure or away from pain. So if you can master a way of utilizing these two different things for your own advantage, and then you can really knock some big things out of the park.
Exactly, man. If you want to make change, you have to change what you associate with pain and what you associate with pleasure. So pretty much everything you can frame it as either avoiding pain or gaining pleasure. And in order to change, you need to reframe that.
Yep. So it's either life controls you, or you
Yes.
control life if you can if you can control these forces.
Mate, very quotable, this book and this episode, isn't it?
Oh,
We're
it
just
is.
bang, short quotes.
Absolutely. So he says what you link pain to and what you link to pleasure to is going to shape your whole life and shape your whole destiny.
Mate, a good example is when Tony was 13 and wanted a beer because he thought it was really cool. He'd get a lot of pleasure from having a beer and being seen as the top dog, the big man of the house drinking a beer.
Yeah, exactly, man. We've all been there. So Tony's daddy walked home, drunk every night. He was looking all cool, knocking down beers. And Tony one day, he was convinced that his biggest next step in his personal growth was to knock down a few beers like daddy over there. So his mum goes, yep. At first she resisted, saying, no, Tony, you're too young. But Tony was committed. He made his decision like Tony does. So the mum said, all right, you can have beers, but one rule, you have to finish all 6.
She said that, if you want to be like your dad, then you got to be like your dad. You can't just have one drink. You got to have the whole 6-pack.
So he had a few sips and, he washed it down. It didn't taste good, but he acted like he enjoyed it. But, his mum said, you have to finish it. So after the second beer, Tony's actually an absolute lightweight. He was in the basement.
Well, mate, he was 13.
Mate, I was knocking back. No, but he was vomiting all over the basin and disgusting.
Mate, he obviously would have felt horrible. Rather than finishing all 6, I'm sure the last thing he wanted to do was drink more beers. But obviously, his mum had said, no, you got to finish all 6. But if you think about it, initially he thought he was going to get so much pleasure from drinking beers, but all he was getting was a hell of a lot of pain from being absolutely munted.
So since that moment at the very start of his life, he developed a gut-level neuroassociation that would guide all his future decisions. And so he links beer to vomit and horrible feelings, as opposed to beer to
fun,
pleasure, and sex when you're young.
Yeah.
Which is, I'll link it to there.
Mate, so you love your beers, obviously.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
Tony reckons he hasn't drunk a beer since. Mate, I wanted to crack a beer with Tony one day, but maybe not.
We'll stick with the Reds, mate. So he says, if we link massive pain to any behaviour or emotional pattern, we will avoid indulging it at all costs. So we can use this understanding to harness the force of pain and pleasure to change anything in our lives. So if you don't want to do something, find any kind of way you can link pain to it, and then you'll avoid it.
That's it, mate. A sick quote from the great man Archimedes. Give me a lever long enough and a prop strong enough, and I can single-handedly move the whole world. And that's it. Basically what you need is a long lever and a strong prop. So you need a lot of pain or a lot of pleasure, and you can change whatever you want to change.
Yeah, and as an engineer, that I can verify that's
that's
actually
true.
Absolutely true.
Just a really big, really long one.
A long lever.
Yeah.
Then you got other forces. We won't.
Mate, so after we've played pain and pleasure, chapter 4 was belief systems.
Yeah, so he kicks it off with the story of this real dickhead dad.
Yeah, so it's a dad. He's a drug addict. He's tried to kill himself a couple of times. Went to jail multiple times. Murdered a dude. Used to rob places. Pretty much bashed anyone who got in his way. And so this bad dude, he had 2 sons. The first son grew up just like his dad, a drug addict. Went to jail. Threatened others. Almost killed a guy. And pretty much ended up just like his dad. But son 2 was the exact opposite. He had a good marriage. He had a happy family, 3 kids. He was a regional manager for a big company. He was physically fit and wasn't addicted to drugs and never even touched drugs. And Tony asked him, how did you guys end up so differently? And one guy says, well, with a father like mine, how could I grow up any differently? And the second son also said, what else would I become growing up with a father like that? So in both scenarios, both kids had the exact same story, the exact same opportunities, and one realized, I've got no choice except to follow in his footsteps, and one said, I've got no choice except to do the exact opposite.
So the moral of the story is it's never the environment, it's never the events, it's all about the meaning we attach to the events. So, there are people out there who have been dealt an extremely bad hand in life, but at the same token, there have been people who've been dealt such bad hands, but use that to make an extremely good life for themselves, right? So it depends what you use your events to mean for your own life.
Exactly, mate. So just to reiterate that, man, it's not the environment, it's the meaning that we attach to that. As you say, maybe the son who went the other way attached a lot of pain and believed that wasn't the way forward. So it's just not what happens, but what you believe or what you associate with that.
So it comes down again to all these beliefs that are just, simmering below the surface that aren't really obvious at all. And he kind of like breaks down what an actual belief actually is.
What is it, mate?
So he says it's really just a feeling of certainty about something. So if you say, I believe I'm intelligent, you're really saying I feel certain or some sense of certainty that I'm intelligent. And it's the feeling of certainty that allows you to tap into the resources to produce intelligent results.
Yeah, if we look back to the very start, remember how we said we had to be certain, we had to have conviction when we couldn't have these limiting beliefs. So having that belief, having that certainty is what allows you to act.
And what makes a belief really stick for yourself? It's all about the references to support the belief. So he says like the belief is like the top of a table, and then the more reference legs below it, the stronger the belief is. So for example, if you say I'm sexy, which is a belief, you can have the legs, my lover tells me I'm sexy. Another leg might be I drive a hot car. Another leg might be I look good in jeans. And another one might be I work out every day. So if you have enough reasons to support it, you can really believe anything. That's what you're saying.
Exactly, mate. You're propping up that table with as many legs as possible. The more legs, the stronger that belief is. Obviously, if the belief is propped up by one or two legs, it's not going to be very stable. You could get knocked down pretty easily.
Yes. So, there are ways you can, and goes into a lot of this kind of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming kind of stuff Tony's all about. But he says you're going to knock out the references of the bad beliefs.
Yes. So,
ask, and he has some exercises in the book where you actually ask a series of questions to knock out the bad beliefs, and then ask a series of questions to kind of strengthen the beliefs that are positive in your life, because these are really the things that shape your destiny, is your belief systems.
Mate, great segue, asking those questions. Ties into another book we did in season 2, A More Beautiful Question. And he says that the only way to get good answers is to ask good questions. So that's, questions is where it's at.
That's it. He kicks it off with a really cool story by a guy named Lech. And he was in the Nazi death camps, right?
Not a good place to be.
Definitely one of the worst places you could be in all of history. But, for weeks he was asking people, how can we escape this horrible place? And everyone else said to him, don't be a fool, there is no escape. Asking such questions will only torture your soul, having hope that you might get out. But he wouldn't accept it. He thought, how can I do it? How can I do it? There must be a way. He asked himself all the time. And then one day, the answer actually came to him from an unlikely source. So this sickening smell of decaying bodies and flesh. So there was a big pile of dead bodies in the corner about to be dumped away by the truck. Right? And a lot of people in the death camps were saying, how can the Nazis be so despicable or destructive? But he asked himself, how can I use this to help my escape? And just having that question, it actually came to him. So he ripped off all his clothes off his body and just dove in naked into this pile of rotten flesh when no one was looking, and he pretended to be dead. And later that day in the freezing cold, a truck picked up all the bodies, put in a mass grave, and then he ran butt naked, 20 miles through the woods to his escape, and he got away from it.
Mate, so that's the difference, was he asked a completely different question. Everyone was concerned about, how can these Nazis be so despicable and so destructive? But he was always looking for the opportunities and asking, how can I use this to my own advantage? How can I use this to escape? As you said, it wouldn't have been a very pleasant experience to lie down and pretend to be dead nude, but I think in the long run, it was a good decision brought on by a good question.
So questions change everything, man. So if you wake up every day in the morning and your alarm goes off, and if you ask yourself, fuck, what I got to my shitty job, so I got to go to work. From the very start, your day's going to be a piece of shit, right?
Yeah,
compared to, if you wake up saying, why am I so lucky? Why am I, born in Australia and got all these things going for me and so forth. If you start off with the right questions, your whole day and whole set of events is going to be entirely different.
Man, it's a completely different emotional state that you put yourself in based on those questions and based on the vocabulary you used. So essentially, rather than saying, why do I get all this crap dumped on my desk or something like that, you can say, how did I get so lucky to be in this place at this time? And it's different questions and also different vocabulary, mate. Good segue into chapter 9. Yeah,
so we'll just touch on chapter 9. So, obviously every moment of the day, there's billions and billions of bits going through our filters of our perception, and then whatever ends up after our filters is what our actual reality is. And questions is part of that. So how we question the world, it kind of changes and skews reality in one direction. But he says another big one, which I really didn't realize, is the idea of vocabulary. So if you find the right word for something, this is actually how it kind of transmutes in your life. is kind of defining what the end product of this whole filter of events in your reality actually is.
So obviously you can have negative vocabulary, like, oh, I'm dreading this, or you can say, I'm looking forward to this challenge. So changing dread to challenge, or changing from failure to learning, or changing from embarrassed to aware. Some of those, there's some examples of changing one word, which completely changes the whole emotion or the whole idea of what you're trying to say.
So it's changing this whole label will change how you perceive the world completely.
It's great stuff, man.
He's got a whole bunch of things like that throughout the book, which I guess you're going to have to read the book, or if you got a 10 grand, you got to go to the seminar. So he says, he wraps it up toward the end of the book where he's really calling the big giant in you to come out. And he says, many people in life know what they should do, but they never really do it. And the reason is they never really have the vision for a compelling future.
That's it, mate. He says that you need to set yourself giant goals in order to give yourself this giant motivation that will lead to this giant change. So obviously, if we're trying to awaken the giant, we can't have a little bitch goal, can we?
Yeah. So, and if you got these big goals, you got to be a giant who's going to take them down. You're not going to be a little bitch.
Yeah.
So he asked the question, what kind of person will I have to become in order to achieve all I want? Right, so you got to grow into someone new if you got these big goals as well.
That's it, man. He says that this is probably the most important question you can ask yourself. It's a question that determines the direction that you need to head in. And it's not, what do I need to do? It's who do I need to become? So what do I need to do? That's a little bitch question. But who do you need to become in order to achieve everything you want? That's a fucking giant question.
Yep.
To awaken that giant within.
Definitely. And man, the world doesn't have this big shortage of problems. Toward the end of the book, he goes through all the different things you can really dedicate your life to, from, homelessness, poverty, climate change. There's so many different things you can choose from for your life to be about to really make a positive change in the world. So it's, how do you want to be remembered? He goes, as a giant amongst men, he says, start acting that way now.
Yeah, be a fucking giant against a bunch of little bitch men.
Don't be a little fucking bitch.
Become a giant, mate. Set some big goals. Have belief in yourself. Make the decision. Go towards that pleasure and fucking become a giant.
Giant that shit. What do you reckon, mate?
Overall, man, I didn't love it. Mate, I'd rather go to a seminar than read a 550-page book. Just... Mate, it seemed a bit repetitive. Some of the stories are pretty weak. But, mate, the cream of... If this was a 120-page book, it'd be some top-notch shit.
Yeah, absolute. It's absolute cream. And it really is just his seminars written out in book format. So it's really not for a book. It's more for a seminar. But if you find a way to actively listen, I think you can get a lot of value, more value than, say, $30.
Oh, yeah.
If you
mate,
can
I just thought I'd better just check this. Mate, this was 1991, so this is almost 30 years old, this book. And as you say, reading the book, I didn't love it, but if you actually took the time to not just speed read it, but actually do the exercises and stuff, ask the questions, take the actions in the book, much more worthy than buying the book for $20-$30.
Yeah, if you don't actively do it and do the exercises in it, I'd give it a 2 out of 10. But I personally give it a 7 out of 10 with everything considered. Yep.
I was expecting higher, mate. I'm also going to give it a 7, but I felt like you enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
Absolutely. I was probably feeling like an 8, but I just said 7 came out of my mouth.
Mate, 7 from me.
It's too late to change though, isn't it?
It's out there.
Or how quickly can you change? It's a bit of a Tony reference there.
It's an inside joke for anyone who's been on like Chappelle.
Okay, the winner of the fan of the week who did something great was Well and Happy on Instagram.
Mate, so they shared their top 5 favourite podcasts. What You'll Learn was one, so thank you very much. Another one was Art of Charm, which a bit of inside knowledge for anyone who's listening, that Jordan Harbinger, the former host of Art of Charm, we're going to sit down and interview him later in the year.
Yep, so send us a message and we'll send you a book, any book.
Awaken the Giant Within, fucking change your life, become a giant.
Yep, giant that shit up. She already is a bit of a giant. She's got a fair following on Insta. So yeah, check her out, Well and Happy.